Are you a punctual person, or do you show up late? We're talking about showing up late on this episode of the Driving with Rob podcast. Are you the kind of person who generally shows up on time for appointments, for work, for school? Or are you the kind of person who is habitually late? I had a friend of mine one time who said, "We are going to start calling you the late Rob Douthit. Can't you be on time for anything?" And I am late a lot. And I mentioned it on the last podcast, on the previous podcast. I do have a tendency to be late when it doesn't matter if I'm on time or not. You know, they say that a true indication of character is when you do the right thing even when nobody's looking. You do the right thing even though nobody's checking up on you and you're not accountable to anybody for it, and you still do the right thing. That's a person of good character, and that shows their good character. But I got to admit, I have a problem sometimes that if there's no consequence to showing up late, then I will be late. Now, as a self-employed person, I don't have to punch a clock because I don't have anybody checking up on me, because there's no consequence if I show up a few minutes late. I have a tendency to show up a few minutes late, but I'm not late for everything. I used to work for this company that had a very, very strict attendance policy, and they let you know up front, if you're late for work, if you're late punching in or clocking in 3 times in a 12-month period, that you would get written up. And we all know what getting written up means. There's a report in your file written down that this person was late for the 3rd time in a 12-month period. If you made it to 5 times, you got suspended without pay for 3 days. It was a manufacturing plant that ran 24 hours a day. And it was primarily for the guys who ran the production machines. And they had a very strict attendance policy, because if you're late, that means the guy who's running that machine has to stay late. And the company didn't want to pay overtime. So in order for that machine to keep running during shift change, you had to be there and be ready to take over when it was time for the previous shift to go home. So as a result, they had a very, very strict attendance policy, and you could not be late. I worked for that company for 8 years. I think I was late 3 times. And pretty much any time I had a job that required me to be there on time, I was there on time, because there was consequences attached to it. Not because I had such good character or such a deep personal drive that I couldn't be late, but because there was a punishment associated with being late. And I'm not making excuses, but let's talk about some of the reasons for being late. I think probably for me, the most common reason that I'm late getting somewhere is because it's someplace I didn't want to go in the first place. It's procrastination. I really don't want to go anyway. The place that I'm going is just going to be unpleasant, and I dread it so much that I put it off as late as I can. And the second most common reason, maybe 1 and 2 are pretty much interchangeable. If there's no accountability, I have a tendency to be late. If I don't have somebody standing over me, threatening me, then I just don't get in a hurry. I don't care if I make it on time or not. What difference does it make if you're 5 or 10 minutes late? But if they're going to punish me or penalize me in some way for being late, then yeah, I'll probably be on time. But just simple procrastination is a big reason for being late and not being on time. But the term habitually late is probably more accurate. It's a habit. You get into the habit of not being on time. You get in the habit of leaving your house at the time you should have arrived at your destination. You look at the clock that last time and say, "Oh, crap," and you grab your stuff and run out to the car. I should have been there already and I haven't even left the house. It becomes a habit. If I have to be somewhere at 9 o'clock, you keep watching the clock, and you know it's going to take you 10 minutes to get there. I need to leave the house at least 10 minutes before 9. Well, the next thing you know, it's 5 minutes till 9. Or 9 o'clock. But another big reason for being late is it's a passive-aggressive thing. You know, I saw a funny meme one time where someone is apologizing for being passive-aggressive. I didn't mean for it to be passive. I show up late because I can. Because there's nobody stopping me. I'm more important to you than you are to me, so I'll show up whenever I decide to show up. And dare you to say something about it. That's passive-aggressive. But a lot of being late is just simple habit. Most of the kids were in marching band, and the director of the marching band said, "Early is on time is late." Because this band director was a very punctual individual. And if he said practice starts at 9 o'clock, practice starts at 9 o'clock. We don't start walking out to the practice field at 9 o'clock. We are on the practice field at 9 o'clock, so practice can start. And as a result, most of my kids are pretty punctual because they learned it from that band director. Early is on time is late. So they developed the habit of being on time. If you want to be on time, you can be on time. You don't always have to be late. But ultimately, it really comes down to setting your priorities and creating a habit. I admire punctuality. I admire people that are on time everywhere they go. I'm just not one of those people. And that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I appreciate you listening. Thanks for downloading. I'll talk to you next time. Bye now.